This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Off-Track Betting.
Welcome to Loose on the Lead. I'm Seth Merrill from Equidaily.com. In a moment, we'll be joined by phone Steve Bick from Sirius and XM's At the Races. He's in Florida, has been for a week or so, and will continue to be for another week or so, where he will be broadcasting live his morning radio show, Sirius and XM. Again, we'll be joined by him in just a moment. Do want to remind you, canceled today, Aqueduct because of the cold weather. Also, Laurel is canceled today. But there are a couple of nice holiday cards, hopefully, that will be run tomorrow on the holiday at both Aqueduct and Laurel, so we'll keep our fingers crossed that they do get to run. Do want to remind you some of the stakes action coming up today at Oaklawn, the Bayakoa Grade 3 event, $100,000, mile and a 16th. Mufajah coming out of the win in the Pippin earlier in the meet is probably going to be the one to beat. You also have the second place finisher out of that race, Haunted Heroine. Gold medal dancer for Donnie Van Hemel has some back numbers that are kind of intriguing. Pearl Turn seems to be in some decent form and ran third in that Pippin. Diva's Diamond on a best effort perhaps ran seventh in the Pippin, but I think is better than that effort. Flashy American with a 91 buyer figure and a fourth place finish in the Fall City at Churchill 2 starts back. Again, last time out, not so much, but that one on a good effort can be up in there. So the Bayakoa is today at Oaklawn. Tomorrow, if they get that holiday card in at Aqueduct, the evening attire, which should be kind of fun. Field of 8 with an entry, so 7 betting interest. Maturko Bravo off a nice second place finish in the Jazzle. Mike Romanich, who won the Jazzle and comes off a couple of stakes wins on the inner track, probably going to be the one to beat in there, but that should be a nice holiday race as well. But we'll keep our fingers crossed that the weather holds up for tomorrow, and we do get Aqueduct and Laurel action in. But speaking of the weather, let's turn with envy now to Steve Bick, Florida. Steve, good morning.
Good morning. Hold on, let me just put down the suntan lotion and the umbrella drink.
There you go. Bloody Mary for the morning, or
no. Even when I drank, I didn't drink those. That's like motor oil, tomato flavored motor oil. I'll pass. Mimosa though. Mimosa.
Oh, there you go. That's a good morning drink. Yeah, there you go.
Or, little Cape Codder, always fun. Now you're talking.
Yeah, you snuck away a couple of weeks ago for the Vegas trip and missed some weather, and you are missing it. Probably another 4 inches on the ground this morning. And as I drove in, the weatherman, and I didn't catch whether it was today or tomorrow he was talking about, but the wind chill factor here, either, as I say, today or tomorrow, minus 40.
I can only extend my sympathy. I wish I was there.
I wish I was there. But give us a little update. You've been down all week long, and I'm sure you made some trips to Gulfstream. So give us a little update on just the racing and beyond the weather down there over the past week or so.
Well, I've actually spent more time at the training facilities. In fact, much more over at Palm Beach Downs, which is just the first time I'd ever been. When I lived, at that time in Boynton, would go to Palm Meadows, but I'd never been to Palm Beach Downs. So I've been over there. Chuck Simon has got his horses down there, and I was really impressed. It's just a very simple and kind of rustic in some ways. And, of course, Todd Fletcher moved all of his horses over from Palm Meadows this year after some frustrations with the surface at Palm Meadows last year. So it's got a great atmosphere. And in fact, I'm there, as some people may have seen on Facebook and on Twitter. I'm there. I figure it's quiet. And next thing I know, here's Angel Cordero with his new apprentice, the kid by the name of Eric Cassell that you've seen at Gulfstream. Very nice kid from Puerto Rico, and I think is going to do well. And he's got Angel, looking after him. And had a fun morning. Got a chance to see the Fusaichi Pegasus gelding that we've got that Chuck basically saved. This horse was very sick, and we're lucky to even get him healthy. So the name is My Beholder, and he's working his way back. He should maybe get a start in maybe in late March. But more or less just doing the show from the studio, and swung by Gulfstream a couple of times. Just some late afternoon action, and I think you set the tone properly, Seth. Everybody that's down here, particularly the Northeasterners, they're just very pleased to be safe and away from what is clearly now a winter for the ages. I mean, it's one thing, it's one thing when you get a little snow, a little cold, you expect that, but not this non-stop abuse. It feels tough for everybody.
Yeah, and as far as the that tying into racing, Aqueduct canceled today. They knew yesterday. They canceled Friday as well because of the cold temperatures and whatnot. But this was the 10th full card lost. They lost an 11th card, partial card. 2 or 3 races were run before they canceled. Also, Laurel cancels today. Park cancels. So the weather certainly has affected the racing in the Northeast all season long. But particularly over the past 3 weeks or so. We were talking on the handicapping show earlier up in our area. Really, it wasn't that bad of a winter until we hit about the last 3 weeks or so. But it's affected everybody, including the racing, obviously.
Well, and it's going to hurt. It'll hurt some handle numbers.
Yeah.
Although, you look yesterday what they did at Santa Anita again. I think $11 million yesterday at Santa Anita, where the racing has just been spectacular. And you assume that the other venues will be the beneficiary to some extent when you get these canceled. But New York's going to make up a few of the dates in March. They've already added 3 or 4 days, so some of it will get made up. In terms of the venues and the various states that legislate exactly how many days of racing need to be done. Not that can't be adjusted, but anyway. And look, it's the winter racing, and we're used to it. This one's a little worse than usual, so we'll make the best of it. And certainly it wasn't a bad week in terms of storylines, at least in New York. I made a suggestion about watching a race from this week that I think is one of the best stories already of the year.
Yeah, and why don't we get right to that, because the guys told me they have it pulled up and ready to go. And I'm sure you're referring to going back to Thursday. Your man, Gary Siaka, who trains for your DT stables. Gary Siaka, of course, had Saratoga Snacks early in his career for Bill Parcells, and they did very well. A very, very talented New York-bred Saratoga Snacks, again, for Bill Parcells, trained by Gary Siaka. And then Bill Parcells moves Saratoga Snacks into the Bill Mott barn. Not as successful. And then, a month and a half or so ago, the news came out that Parcells sold the horse to Gary Siaka. And Steve will look back at the allowance event on Thursday. The first race back in the Siaka barn, not only trainer Siaka, but owner Gary Siaka. Number 2 Saratoga Snacks went off as the third choice, 7-2, and wins pretty nicely here. He will be the number 2 horse on your screen.
Well, there's a lot going on here, and certainly everyone that knows my association and friendship with Gary, it's going to be pretty predictable. That I'll laud Seth. There's so many things about this, Seth, that are that make it a great story, and the reason it's getting the attention it's getting and the applause that it's getting is because it had the potential and seemed to have one of those racetrack stories attached to it that was really wrong for all the wrong reasons. You have a guy, Bill Parcells, who's been friendly with Gary for 30 years, and who, is working together and had Gary pick out horses. He picked this horse out himself. Gary did for a coach, paid $60,000, which was a little bit more than Parcells wanted. And then Gary and Woodbury Payne, who of course developed the horse down in Virginia, Woodbury got him started, and then Gary goes off and wins 3 stakes, including the Empire Classic. This is a horse that Mrs. Nielsen, of course, who also bred Upstart. This is a big, heavy horse. He's a Ridgeling, so there's certain problems associated with being a Ridgeling to begin with. He's got terrible feet. He's always had terrible feet. and very thin hoof walls. So he's a horse that requires a lot of work and a lot of care. And not to say that he didn't get work and care in the Bill Mott barn, but the reason that he ends up getting moved, Bill Parcells gets taken in by somebody whispering in his ear. And there's a lot of that goes on at the racetrack. People who heard me Friday on the radio talk about this. It's one of the worst aspects of the game. People with their own self-interest, they put a burr under the saddle of other people, and they undermine relationships. And that's what happened here. And Parcells, who told Gary, if you read the quotes in the Dave Brennick piece, you'll see Parcells said point blank he learned a valuable lesson in all of this. Parcells has also told mutual friends like Coach Dan Henning it's the worst professional decision, sports-related, he's ever made in his career. Think about that. All the kids that he drafted, he says that moving this horse was the worst decision he's ever made. And to his credit, Parcells, he made things right by getting the horse back to Gary and giving Gary a chance to resurrect Saratoga Snacks' career. And this is a huge team effort, and it really tells the story of why there's differences around the track, and that not every horse in the hands of a Hall of Famer is going to be improved. This horse didn't need to be improved. He was already as pretty much as good as he could be. And Gary did that. And so to move it to Mott and expect somehow that was going to move the horse up, in fact, it was the opposite. The horse moved down. So there's a very important message here, because we're in an era where there are way too many good horses in way too few barns. And it doesn't take away from Mott and Fletcher and Chad Brown and Bob Baffert and Jerry Hollendorfer and trainers like this. But the numbers say that 85% of the stake horses in this country are in the hands of 15% of the horsemen. And that's a disproportionate number, and it's a problem. It's one of the biggest unspoken problems we have in the sport. And the difference between Hall of Fame trainers and very good, competent Monday through Friday trainers, it's not that big. It's not that big. There's not some big magic elixir. There may be some elixirs, but there's not some magic that is in one barn than another. The basic horsemanship is spread all around. What's not spread around are the good horses. And every trainer out there wants to get a chance to pick out and develop and train a Saratoga Snack. And the message here that's very important to be spread to owners and prospective owners is you don't need to be in the barns of Hall of Famers to get a horse into the winner's circle or into stake winner's circle. You pick a trainer because you want to have a relationship and you want to go hang out at the barn and you want to go to dinner. T.J. Kelly, or actually I think it was Nehru who told me once, said when you pick a trainer, you're buying a friend. And so, not to say that the big trainers don't have relationships with their owners, but you want somebody that you're going to interface with on a regular basis. And let's be honest, the vast majority of owners that come in, they're not going to be hobnobbing, unless they're bringing millions and millions. They're not going to be hobnobbing with Todd Fletcher and Bill Mott and Bob Baffert. I mean, it's not practical. So why does horse after horse after horse end up in these same barns? It's just preposterous. And people say, we don't run enough allowance races. We don't run allowance races because all of the good allowance horses are in the same barn. I mean, this is the one element in the game that I never see anybody write about or talk about. And it's the biggest single problem we've got. There's too many horses in too few hands.
And as you say, it isn't written about, and people don't talk about it that much. And so folks watching may say, well, why should I care? But you brought up the great point. When there are that many horses concentrated with that few number of trainers, it affects field size. Well, very logically affects field size. They don't want to run against each other. Exactly.
I mean, how do you turn to your owner? If you're Todd Fletcher, the one guy's in the winner's circle, and the other owner is off, kicking the cat. And what do you say to him? Oh, I'm sorry that my other horse beat you. It's just, it's a real issue, and nobody seems prepared to discuss it. At least out there professionally, we bring it up, and it's not a knock. Some people say, well, what was Bill not supposed to do? Oh, why wouldn't he take that horse? Well, you know what? There's also some responsibility from the trainers to say, I'd love to have a horse with you, but let's do it fresh. We'll pick one out at a sale, and we'll we'll start from square one. I can't do better for you than this guy's done already. So, I mean, yes, am I close to this particular case? Yeah, I am. But I also know the particulars of what went into it and how much goes into it. And people say, well, why would there be a fall off between, the way the horse was campaigned by Gary compared to the way it was campaigned by Mott? Again, without trying to insult the Mott barn, the reality is, do you want your horse to be number 1 in a barn or number 41?
Yeah, and that's a great point. If you have a horse that maybe needs some special attention in those bigger barns, particularly if you're the owner who only has 1 or 2 horses in there, you're down the depth chart, and so that horse may not get the special attention it needs. Whereas with the smaller guy, you're going to get that hands-on personal attention.
Exactly, and people say, well, what's the difference? So for those of you that don't really know the ins and outs, what the difference is? The difference is that the small barn that has the one big horse, they'll let the exercise rider go out and spend not 18 minutes with the horse on the racetrack, but maybe 40 minutes. The horse gets to go out, he gets to take his time going to the track, he gets to stand against the rail and relax, he gets to do his work, then he gets to come back. I mean, if some horses, instead of just shoving them through their work, their jog or their gallop or whatever it's going to be, there's horses, famously, you think about Miesta Prubal, Carla Wolfson, there were days where she'd have to stand for 45 minutes with Miesta Prubal at the gap because he wouldn't go on the racetrack. And she, for 2 or 3 months, while the horse was sour and didn't want to train, she would just stand there with him, and if he didn't want to go on the track, she'd let him turn around and go back to the barn. And then one day, he went right into the gap and said, okay, I'm ready to train. And these are little nuances. It's taking the horse out in the afternoon and grazing him for an hour. There's so much going on here. You had, for instance, the feed issue. You've got people working on Saratoga Snacks' feet maybe twice a day, and whether it's poultice and whether it's careful with dressing of the hooves. Then you had Ian McKinley come in, who's the expert on quarter cracks and repair a couple of quarter cracks. Tom Costello, a veteran blacksmith, with glue on shoes and all that goes into that. I mean, there's so much to this, and again, it's not a knock on the big barns, and everybody appreciates how much work it took the big barns to get big, but there's got to be enough talent to go around. And the game, people, the game's in trouble. This is one of the reasons. If there are serious problems, this is a big problem. And the people say, well, how did that come about? It came about because years ago, the racing secretaries wouldn't let any one barn have more than one set of stalls. There was a period of time where you couldn't have more than 30 horses. And I was at Palm Beach Downs. Fletcher's got 5 barns out of like 9. He's got half the whole facility is him. I mean, you got trainers with 250 horses. What? Nobody sees an issue with this. It's a completely out of proportion. And then when a good horse does come along, because the small outfits, because they're all hand to mouth, they end up having to a lot of times sell the horses, to the big offers, and then the horses end up back in the big barns, like a feeder pool. I mean, it's a vicious cycle.
Yeah,
I mean, it's ridiculous to me. I mean, to me, this is something that is easily fixable, but at the same time, the industry keeps pushing new big owners into these same barns.
Yeah, it's interesting. It is a topic worthy of discussion, but you're absolutely right. It's something that just does not get discussed very often. Occasionally it'll come up, typically on something like this or your radio show. There's more conversation amongst people just kind of shooting the breeze rather than the industry really addressing this. And I think there's a number of reasons probably for that as well. But it was interesting you brought the Nehru quote about when you hire a trainer, you're hiring a friend, because you and I had Parcells and Gary Siaka on with us on Loose on the Lead. What was it? 2 summers ago up at Saratoga. Clearly, very friendly, a great relationship then. And when this happened, when the horse went into the Mott barn, it was kind of surprising at that point. It's interesting now that Parcells has obviously expressed a little bit of regret about the decision. Do want to ask if you talked to Gary, because this race on Thursday, it was $69,000 allowance purse, and these were stakes quality runners in here, and he won nicely by a length, as we saw. Has Gary made any thoughts about where the horse will start next?
Not particularly. I mean, he told Dave Brennig, maybe the commentator, which would be a very good target for Belmonte for the New York Reds. That's a nice spot. That makes sense to work toward that. Right now, he's going to monitor him. He came out of the race as good as a horse can come out. And I mean, if you watch him gallop out, I mean, he basically re-broke past the wire and kept going. He's a funny horse. Gary knew, of course, they had the race that was canceled from the previous week, and Gary knew what he had here, and that basically, Saratoga Snacks was back to being himself, and because whenever he's come up to a big race, Saratoga Snacks has tried to do something to kill himself, and that's gone on for a long time, and he starts to try to fight people. There was the time up at Saratoga before the Morrissey 2 years ago, when he went up on his hind legs and he got his bridle caught on an eye hook, and he was hanging there like the Oxbow incident, like a lynching. And the other time, I think twice before wins, going back to his maiden and early wins with Ramon, he got loose the week of races. And then this week at Belmont, ahead of the race, same thing. He reared up, fell in a snowbank, and dropped his rider. And so there's always a clue that he's about to run a big race. And you can see it physically. I mean, he put a coat back on. He was touting himself again in the paddock. He just he looked like himself again. And there's a lot to look forward to. He's probably has to get an open company stake win, either a graded or some sort of a listed open stake to make the next level toward trying to become a stallion. He's the tail of the cat. He's a big, beautiful horse, and certainly has got bordering on a stallion resume. He is a Ridgeling, so is AP Indy. Another couple of stake wins. If Gary can craft them this year. He could be a stallion, certainly in New York. He's got a great New York heritage with Mrs. Nielsen, all the great work she does, is evidence in his pedigree. So I can't root. You want a good story to root for, this is it.
Yeah, and you have to think if Gary kind of picks a spot in open stakes, it's just not out of the question. You're looking at the PPs, the one they tried was the Cigar Mile. That was obviously they're shooting for the stars there, but I have to think this horse is talented enough to, again, they pick their spots and get a little crafty. That's probably in the offing. All right, why don't we head to our first commercial, Steve? When we come back, take a look at some of the stakes action from yesterday, and also a little preview, get some of your thoughts, and I'll toss mine out there as well on the Southwest, scheduled for tomorrow at Oaklawn, part of their trail to their Arkansas Derby. Some nice 3-year-olds lined up tomorrow there on the holiday card. So we'll do all that when we come back. More Loose on the Lead continues right after this.
The road to the Kentucky Derby ends with the most exciting 2 minutes in racing, but getting there begins long before then. With 34 prep races that span 15 tracks, the best place to watch, wager, and win is Capital OTB and OTB TV. Upcoming Derby prep races include, on February 21st, the Risen Star from the Fairgrounds and the Fountain of Youth from Gulfstream Park. So for in-depth coverage and expert analysis of all the Derby prep races, stay with Capital OTB and OTB TV.
Go Zephyr kicking clear, and Go Zephyr is pulling Ginger Punch to win it.
And it's Wilco in front, and he's going to pull off a huge upset here.
But it's Round Pond going on to take the distaff.
Awesome again. Sire of 10 Grade 1 winners, 4 Breeders' Cup champions, and 4 multimillionaires, standing at Adena Springs.
Think you know how to handicap? Well, here's your chance to prove it. February 22nd at the Clubhouse Racebook, it's the Live Money Handicapping Contest. Your chance to go up against other race fans, test your handicapping skills, and share in the day's prize pool. You'll be betting on 6 races from Aqueduct with win and place wagers, but you must be registered before the first contest race goes off. So if you think you're the best handicapper in the room, we'll see you February 22nd at the Clubhouse Racebook for the Live Money Handicapping Contest.
It's more than just a sports bar. It's Stadium Cafe. Located at 389 Broadway in Saratoga, it's the place to be for great times and great food. Their menu features everything from gourmet entrees to your favorite wraps and sandwiches. Or maybe you just want to grab a beer and catch the game. So what could be better than that? How about 2 Stadium Cafes? There's also the Westside Stadium, right up the road at 112 Congress Street. Same great menu, same great service. Whether you're hanging at the bar or just relaxing outside on their spacious covered patio, you'll always leave knowing you'll be back again.
We love, above all, the staff. We love Dave Harmon, and the food is fantastic.
Not 1, but 2. 112 Congress Street, 389 Broadway. Guaranteed to be a home run.
Welcome back to Loose on the Lead for a Sunday morning. Seth Merrow in the studio. Steve Bick live via phone from Florida. And Steve, why don't we jump right into some Florida action from yesterday. Yesterday's feature at Gulfstream was the Grade 3 Hurricane Birdie, the subdivision of the older fillies and mares on the sprint side. Mary Meadow went off as the even money favorite, but just barely. Also at even money was More Than a Party. I talked about the race a couple of times during the week on Racing Across America, and More Than a Party to me was really intriguing in that it just seemed like she took a late break at the end of 2014 and seemed to have come back as an improved performer. So More Than a Party was interesting to me. We will watch, however, the 2 even money favorites in here, Ding Dong at number 4, Mary Meadow, number 1, More Than a Party. And as often happens in these kind of situations, one horse eventually gets the better of the other, and Mary Meadow pulls away and wins pretty convincingly here.
Well, great from Mark Hennig. I mean, Hennig went into the day between New York with the Broadway with Lightly, and with this race with a real chance to sweep a couple of nice stakes, and he'll have to settle for the graded variety. She was dominant in here, and he's done a tremendous job. Mary Meadow, 98 buyer out of here, and this was a powerhouse performance. She's the good, and just has to keep her, healthy and happy all the way through the course of the year. And I'm sure that he's going to tour through Keeneland and get her a chance, over the Keeneland surface in advance of trying to get back there in the fall for the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint.
And speaking of Keeneland and the Keeneland surface and whatnot, did you read the story in the Racing Forum about Wesley Ward bringing some of his horses over to train at Turfway? And he has the Great War there, of course, who obviously seems meant for the synthetic surface, ain't for the spiral. But I found it interesting that beyond that, he has some of his other top horses up in Kentucky, and they're popping over to train on the synthetic over at Turfway.
Well, listen, Wesley was very outspoken. Not that he can't adjust to other sets of conditions, but he loved the Keeneland surface, and you understand all the success that he's had. I mean, he's actually, as we talked at the time of the eclipses, Wesley Ward is almost I'd say these days a top 10 trainer in the country.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and the Great War is going to be interesting to follow going forward on the 3-year-old trail. And speaking of 3-year-olds, let's take a look at the 3-year-old action from yesterday, which was out in Northern California, Golden Gate Field, the El Camino Real Derby Grade 3 event, a couple of $100,000 on the line, 1 1/8 on their synthetic surface, and that meant you had some horses coming in with synthetic or turf form. The favorite was one of those, Conquest Typhoon. Mike Smith came up to ride, the 9-5 favorite for Mark Casse. Number 9 Conquest Typhoon will run third in here. The winner, a little bit of an upset, Metaboss at 6-1 gets it done under Alex Solis, and moves, and I'm just looking at the list here, Metaboss now moves to number 13 on the Kentucky Derby points leaderboard with 10 points. Metaboss is going to be the number 3 horse as we watch the stretch run here. But as I said, a little bit of an upset. Conquest Typhoon, maybe off the layoff since November, was, maybe needed a race or whatnot. Even before the race, I was kind of wondering about that. But I'll tell you, Metaboss looks pretty good here, coming under the wire, winning off by 2.5 lengths.
Well, and this was a fun betting race. I don't necessarily think we've got any serious Derby horses here. Metaboss will probably, he'll be probably that D-level type of horse that comes out of the El Camino Real Derby and out of this kind of a path. And he's a nice horse. It's not a knock on him. 85 buyer out of it. Conquest Typhoon maybe needs the tightener. I wasn't necessarily all that convinced, and I was trying prices in here. I tried the Mullins horse, who was fifth at a big number, and so forth. That crossed the line, who was second, arriving late. But I was kind of surprised that horse crossed the line in particular didn't attend the pace a little bit more, given how little on paper, how little pace there was going to be. So the race was run kind of oddly, I thought, and Metaboss from that perspective, closing into a slowish, early fraction, that's impressive. And, certainly Jeff Fonzie, Alex Solis, there's a lot of nice elements to this. I think he's okay. I will say one thing. If you didn't notice this, this was the first 1 mile and an eighth Derby prep, with the points and so forth. Oh, right, yes. And take a look, go back and look at those TPs again, because I realized it, and, Metaboss was a talking horse. A lot of people were on Metaboss because he had, run second to Bolo, the Carla Gaines horse that everybody's waiting to run back. There's a lot of anticipation associated with Bolo. So Metaboss has kept good company, and so people were looking to him in that regard. But he had run 1 mile and an eighth and on the turf, and then you had that fourth place horse whose name I'm going to forget. You got the chart?
Yes, fourth place was Harmonic.
Harmonic was 40-1, and Harmonic was also the only other horse in the field that had run 1 mile and an eighth. So be aware and remember this. I can think back to Fly Down. Well, I think it was Fly Down's Florida Derby, and he and the Ramsey horse, the two of them were the only ones. They finished a nose apart. They had both made 3 starts at 1 mile and an eighth. When we get to this, you get to that 9th furlong. Those closing sprinters and the horses that have middle distance pedigrees, this is where some separation is going to happen. So be aware now that we're hitting 1 mile and an eighth in these preps, keep an eye out for ones that have already, even if it's on the turf, like in this case, be aware that the horses that have already proven themselves at 1 mile and an eighth. And then also be aware of horses that, may jump up and be better getting that 9th furlong. Because this is now the dividing line. And sometimes it takes a couple of Saturdays at this point in the year to sort of let that sink in. And right after they crossed the wire and I looked down at that Harmonic, I said, oh, my God, here's 1 mile and an eighth horse, that's already shown.
Who won at 2-5 at 1 mile and an eighth in the previous race.
Yeah. And, not that I was even close to having a super, and I'm not even a super better, but the 1 mile and an eighth thing really sunk into my head, and I wanted to, I'll drive that point home on the radio this week too, because it's a dividing point. This is where the rubber meets the road to some extent on pedigree and training and experience.
Yeah, more of those type of races are going to be coming up over the next few weeks. All right, let's quickly talk about a couple other races from yesterday. Didn't pull up a video from just because they came up after I sent in the rundown for today. But the Essex at Oaklawn yesterday, a listed stake for $100,000. That one was interesting because it was the second start back for Ride on Curlin. Ride on Curlin went off as the 4-5 favorite, but Todd Pletcher ships in Golden Lad, Ricardo Santana on board, and Golden Lad won pretty easily. Now, there was a foul claim. The rider on Ride on Curlin claimed, John Court claimed against Ricardo Santana on Golden Lad. First time under the wire, about 16th or not. It wasn't quite a furlong.
No, it was off the break. It was off the break, right out of the gate. Is what is the point.
I thought it was 10 strides out or so from.
Well, whatever. I mean,
and he comes over. I'll say this: I would love to see a steward's report, because I thought he did come over, and I thought it was worth the stewards maybe taking a little bit of action afterwards. I didn't think it was enough that it had any effect on the race.
Oh, absolutely not, and they're pretty frivolous in terms of the call. I understand. I can't blame Court necessarily for throwing the flag and asking for them to look at it. Probably not a stupid move, but it's a little silly to think that Ride on Curlin, who's going to come from off the pace anyway, and that at that point in the race, anything that happened right there in this particular circumstance, how that was going to affect things later on. Because Ride on Curlin, not that he was dropping out of it, but he was certainly not going to be more forward than 6th or 7th. So who's kidding who? I mean, it was a Hail Mary on Court's part. And Ride on Curlin ran a decent enough race, second off the layoff. Golden Lad, I thought I picked Golden Lad, and actually this race kind of bailed me out for the day after some frustration. And it's funny. I made the point on Twitter. The littlest thing, Seth, can sometimes, make your day or get you even, or just have some money to get home with. And in this case, it was the third place finisher holding third. I got it all. That horse I made the value horse, and I thought was the right price among several other prices. And sure enough, he holds third and ends up with a $135 trifecta here that really made the difference. In terms of what I did during the day, because I was getting my head handed to me at Oaklawn, and I
135 for a buck with the second choice over the 4 to 5 favorites. So that horse obviously did juice up the trifecta.
Exactly, and believe me, I thought I was praying that he was going to hold third, because for greater glory, the Steve Hobby was coming late and almost got him. So I thought that the El Camino, Essex, and the John Campbell, I know you're going to talk with Frank Vesti next, I thought those were the three most intriguing races of the day, and that had the most fun and the most wagering potential, and was lucky to come away with something good out of this one. Got to mention too, before we wrap, for those that didn't see the Bob Baffert 6-furlong debut winner in the second race at Santa Anita yesterday, here's yet another impressive 3-year-old to join the fray from the barn. Not just Baffert, but Colleen Shah. And this is a homebred for Colleen Shah. And his name is Power Jam. He's by Concord Point. And, boy, this was really impressive. And he's going to stretch out, it looks like, easily. 92 buyer. Really a very good debut. Maybe a little too late for him. We'll see about Triple Crown season. But this was visually impressive. And, Colleen Shah, for all the people that were muttering and snickering about 2 years ago about, Shah, they're soaking Shah for money, and, he put in millions and got nothing. Well, how's he doing now? And how's he making out these days, folks? Colleen Shah, hitting on all cylinders.
Yeah, and that was Power Jam's second race at Santa Anita yesterday. If people want to look it up, I'll pull up a replay later this week on Racing Across America. And Steve, before we let you go, let's just spend a minute taking a look at the Southwest tomorrow. Grade 3 event, $300,000, mile and a 16th. And I'll tell the guys in the control room, they can just kind of go back-to-back on these replays if they want to, because I wanted to pull up, obviously, the Smarty Jones. We have the first 3 from that race coming back. Far right, number 1 wins, number 7 Bayard runs second, and number 3 Mr. Z, who looks like a winner at the top of the stretch, and then has that crazy drunken sailor kind of move where it allows the horses to come up and catch him. Mr. Z runs third. I'm going to be really intrigued to see what Mr. Z does tomorrow. But coming out of this, Far Right and Bayard, I liked Bayard going into this race. I still kind of like Bayard tomorrow. And also we have the maiden special race from January 17th over at Gulfstream. The number 3 J.S. Bach will be the winner there in the second career start, and a pretty impressive winner for Todd Pletcher. But also in here you have Cantoon, who broke the maiden in the 7th career start, but did it pretty impressively over the Oak Lawn Strip. Bold conquest for Steve Asmussen, another one that could be a little bit intriguing. But what were your thoughts in the Southwest?
Well, first of all, be aware that the War Story is going to scratch out of here through the 11, and they were already considering going right back to New Orleans. They had shipped over Tom Amos and Ronte Alucci and, of course, Chris Dunn from our area. They're going to bypass this, probably a smart move. And weather is a story in Hot Springs tomorrow as well. They're expecting a big nosedive and potential for that track to freeze, which would be a problem. So we'll see. You talk about Mr. Z. Not only was there the fiasco off Sparty Jones, but really go back to the Los Alamitos Futurity, where he was trying to get out the entire stretch, and not trying to cast aspersions, but there's when horses are taking left turns and are trying to get left out and out, they're telegraphing physical issues. So we'll see. Some horses for Lucas, you know how Lucas is with this. He'll either power through them until the horse can't go any further or any more, or the horse will, prevail. Last year, strong mandate, he didn't go on. The year before, Dublin was remarkable. Dublin just kept coming out there, like Chuck Wepner, the Bayonne's leader. He just kept coming. And he was remarkable. He managed to work through it. Optimizer, a horse that worked through with the gauntlet that is the Wayne Lucas system. So we'll see about Mr. Z. I got a few horses in here that I was impressed with. A 2-year-old like Mike Campbell, the Illinois horseman with Private Prospect. I'm curious, second off the layoff. He did not run badly, actually, in that Sparty Jones off the break, so maybe he'll be a little tighter. Fired, Clark Brewster and Steve Asmussen, they took the path of least resistance with him off the impressive maiden win at Saratoga. They didn't face the heavy heads. They retreated down to Clark's hometown of Tulsa and down to Oklahoma City for Remington's run-up, including things like the Clever Trevor and Springboard and so forth. And, I just don't know if he's serious quality going forward. J.S. Bach, of course, is just one of the Pletcher, monsters. There's no shortage of these. Who's worth looking at, I thought, at a price, and he's going to get lost in the shuffle. What about Phenomenal Phoenix, the summer bird that Donnie Von Hemel has got? And Von Hemel, for Saunders and Hirsch, who you mostly see associated with Brett Calhoun, Phenomenal Phoenix has made every start a forward progress. And this is a horse as a summer bird. He didn't expect to be winning or as a 2-year-old or at short distances. So I think... And
I think that horse that beat him last time, Instant Replay, is going to turn out to be nice.
Yeah. I think if you're looking for a price, because you know that Lucas and Pletcher are going to take plenty of money, and I suppose Cassie's going to take money. Far Right is a talking horse as well. So if you're looking for a price, I don't see how Phenomenal Phoenix isn't any better than 5th or 6th choice in here, which makes him, 15, 18 to 1. I got a feeling that I'm going to end up in that camp. And you mentioned Cantoon. Cantoon, that was one of these horses that took forever to break his maiden. He certainly is bred for sprinting, but he broke his maiden at 1 mile and 1/16 on this racetrack. So we'll see. And actually, 2 of his better performances have come, December and January with experience and age and at longer distances, even though he's not bred that way. So I'm going to look elsewhere from the obvious players. I'll be looking for a price in here, and I think Donnie Von Hemel, it's about time for him to reemerge a little bit. He's been quiet since those big horses of his retired. Maybe Donnie Von's got something going.
Yeah, that's a good call in the exotics, at least. All right, Steve, we'll head for our break here, and we'll let you go. We obviously appreciate the visit. Again, you're down in Florida. For folks who are tuning into your radio show on Sirius and XM, hear you from Florida all week long. We appreciate the time this morning, however, and we'll talk to you again or see you again next week. What's the situation?
No, you won't be seeing me. You'll be seeing a picture of me. In fact, I'll send you pictures.
You say that like it's a
from the pool.
It's like a foregone conclusion, but maybe it is until the snow melts. We'll see. I don't blame you at all. Steve,
No,
thanks.
I got Fountain of Youth next week. I'll be at Fountain of Youth.
Yeah. Well, you could have gotten the red eye out. Who knows?
No.
All right. Well, we do appreciate the visit, and we'll talk to you next week.
Very good.
All right, Steve Bick. Again, Sirius and XM's At the Races, which is replayed every morning here on Capital OTB TV. Take our break, and when we come back, Frank Vespi from the RacingBiz.com coverage of Mid-Atlantic Racing, which means Laurel Park. We'll talk some of their stakes action from yesterday. Also, a little preview of the nice stakes tomorrow as well. Stay tuned.
I got it. Watch me. I got it. Hey! I got something that makes me want to shout. I got something that tells me what it's all about. I got a move that tells me what to do. If you don't, brothers and sisters, then you won't know what it's all about.
Fascinated by the world of horse racing? Interested in honing your handicapping skills? Class is in session. Night school, Monday nights. Easy to access online. It's free, interactive, and informative for the casual and serious race fan. Horse Player Now Buzz. Live horses to watch emailed to you daily. Our eyes, your prize. Night school in the buzz. Visit horseplayernow.com for details.
I'm Anthony Mormino with Horses and Courses, letting you know that there are some exciting new changes coming to OTB TV. With the new programming schedule and the addition of some great new tracks, now there are more ways to watch, wager, and win. So keep it right here on OTB TV, Time Warner Cable, Channel 1250.
I didn't want to get just any degree after high school.
Horse racing has always been my passion. I was already a lawyer.
When I was young, my dad took me to the races. The sound of the crowd. I still remember
I'm 40, and I don't want to stay in a career I don't love.
I want to follow my passion.
Follow your passion at the University of Arizona Racetrack Industry Program.
Instead of braving those frigid March winds, you could be basking in the sunshine at this year's Florida Derby at Gulfstream Park. And it's all on us. Simply join other handicappers at the Clubhouse Racebook on March 7th for a live money handicapping contest, and you could win a 2-day trip to Gulfstream Park for the 2015 Grade 1 Florida Derby. You'll be betting on 8 races from Aqueduct and Gulfstream, and if you're successful, you're off to South Florida. It's your chance to be trackside at this year's Florida Derby, courtesy of Gulfstream Park and Capital OTB.
Welcome back to Loose on the Lead. As promised before the break, we are joined now by Frank Vespi from the RacingBiz.com. If you want to follow racing in the Mid-Atlantic region, no better place to do it than the RacingBiz.com. Good morning, Frank.
Morning, Seth. How are you today?
Very good, and I think we're all in the same boat. It's all cold in the Northeast. Laurel is canceled today as well as Aqueduct, but we have our fingers crossed for tomorrow. Because obviously down at Laurel, another great stakes card, but great stakes yesterday. So we'll do a little review, a little preview as well. But before we get into the races themselves, just give us a little recap of what the atmosphere was like yesterday. Obviously, there was some cold weather, so did you wind up with a good crowd?
Yeah, you know, it was kind of an inside crowd more than an outside crowd yesterday because of the weather, but you know, it was a pretty good crowd, and it looked like there was pretty good wagering, certainly on some of the races, including the big races. And you know, it was we'll talk about this more, but it was a nice scene after Lady Sevilla won the won the Fritchie, because she's the local horse, the local trainer, and the whole thing. And you know, so she came back. All you know, sort of big crowd of people were crowding around the winner's circle and clapping, and it was a pretty neat moment.
Yeah, and talked with Dave Rodman on Friday, and he mentioned Lady Sevilla specifically. Obviously, we talked about that horse because of the talent, but he said there would be a lot of rooting interest down there. All right, let's kick things off by taking a look at the John Campbell, $100,000 a mile and an 8. When I talked with Dave, I said I thought Sailor's Revenge would be interesting off the big race the end of December over at Parks. Sailor's Revenge, the number 10 horse, will wind up running fourth in here at 4-1. The winner's going to be the number 3, Paige McKenney, who I thought was interesting off some live buyer numbers over the last few races. Stuck in maybe a little bit of a bridesmaid role over the past 3, having run second, but one of those was the Claiming Crown Jewel down at Gulfstream Park. Prior to that, the Richard Small at Laurel, second place finish as well. So knocking at the door with good numbers, but you can tell the betting public was having trouble making up their minds because Paige McKenney, the number 3, does win as the favorite, but the 3-1 favorite. So, the betting public wasn't locked on. Ciro, I also thought was interesting, having won earlier this year and late last year on the Strip, but most recently having run 6th in the Native Dancer. Would that one bounce back? The answer, no, as Ciro winds up running 5th in here. And in fact, it is Paige McKenney as the 3-1 favorite, but as we see the ding-dong battle here under the wire, 19-1, Behemoth second, AP Chino 79-1 running third. So again, the betting public kind of couldn't make up their mind. They got the favorite right, but underneath, a little bit of an upset.
Yeah, it's this was one of those races, and you could really see it if you look at the chart and see the odds, as you're saying. I mean, there were about 5 or 6 horses, and you could put them in a bag and shake it up, and a different one would come out every time. And I think there were about 5 horses that were 5-1 or less. So a lot of different ways to go here. But Paige McKenney's a really neat story. This is a horse that I think it was in 13 was claimed for $16,000 out of a 16 Never Win 2 by Mary Epler, who's the trainer, and Mary has just done a really, really nice job with this horse. And last year he went on and won 6 races and over $300,000. And he's just one of those horses. He's not the greatest horse in the world, certainly, but he never runs a bad race. He always gives you what he has, and sometimes it's good enough, like yesterday, and sometimes it's not quite good enough, as it had been the 3 previous times. But he always gives you a good ride. It was the first of 2 stakes wins on the day for Horacio Carmanos, and kind of just a neat sort of symmetrical sort of thing. It was the John Campbell handicap. John Campbell is known, he's remembered today by most people as the guy who weighted the Carter handicap with the triple dead heat. And yesterday you got 3 horses within a neck and a head of each other in the photo, and a 4th one a half length back. So
yeah, that Carter, what was like 1944 or something, right? There's that famous photograph.
Yeah, exactly right. And this race was, without being a dead heat, about as close as you're going to get to that kind of finish.
Yeah, the cosmic racing world comes together. All right, let's shift our attention now to the Fritchie, the Grade 2 event for $300,000, 7 furlongs. These are the fillies and mares, and as you noted earlier, there was a lot of sentimental favoritism for Lady Sibilia, although she went off as the co-second choice at 5-2. The favorite, not really surprising, it was Sam's Sister. That one came out of the Santa Monica win for Jerry Hollendorfer out at Santa Anita most recently. Hollendorfer elects to ship east. That's notable, and this one coming out of a nice stakes win out at Santa Anita, going the 7 furlong trip. So Sam's Sister, the number 10 horse, winds up as the 2-1 favorite. Runs 4th in here, however. Lady Sibilia, who I tilted in that direction when I talked to Dave Rodman the other day, because this horse just seems to be in incredible form right now. It is number 9, Lady Sibilia, over the number 1, Princess Violet. The co-5-2 second choices, Princess Violet in off of nice training effort most recently down at Palm Meadows for Mike Hushin, comes north and runs second. Number 2, Expression, runs third at 65-1. But Lady Sibilia, boy, she is phenomenal right now.
Yeah, I mean, she's really, really good, and she's really, really good right now. And Robin Graham has done a really nice job with her. She's the Frank Wright homebred, and she's a horse that's had a little thing here and a little thing there. She had some shins as a 2-year-old. She has this weird eye thing where her eye sort of gets ulcerous for no apparent reason, so they run her in a bubble blinker. But she's super talented, and I really liked her coming into the spot. And one of the things that was, people, you look at the workouts, and her last work prior to this was about a week ago, and she went 5 furlongs and 58 and change, which is very fast. I went and looked at all the works that day, and it was more than a second faster than any other work. I mean, she was just on her toes, and you know, if they're going to let her go as they let her go kind of yesterday, she's not coming back. And so I think they have to give real thought to looking at some bigger spots down the road for her. Sam's sister, I think, was kind of the disappointment. She was an interesting handicapping challenge, I thought, because she had these really sort of glittering company lines. She won the Grade 1. She was Paris. She was Banky Mary Lou. But her figures didn't really match up. You know, she was getting sort of high 80s, and all these other horses were getting in the 90s. On the sheets, her figures weren't as good. So it's kind of an interesting, do you look at the class, do you look at the figures, how do you measure those things? And I think all those things, plus maybe being on a different track and it being 9 degrees, I think all that may have taken a toll on Sam's sister.
Yeah, the weather certainly had to be a shock. All right, and finally yesterday, the stakes portion of the card wound up. The Maryland Racing Media, $100,000 on the line for fillies and mares, going 1 mile and an eighth. Dave Rodman on Friday mentioned Luna Time for Grand Motion. I thought that horse was going to have to step it up a little bit. Speaking of numbers, I thought number-wise, probably, you know, in the ballpark, certainly off of that last win, but I thought just incrementally would have to step it up. But the betting public disagreed, making Lunar Surge, the 5-2 favorite, and number 8 Lunar Surge. I'm talking about Luna Time. There you go. Lunar Surge is the number 8 horse. Luna Time was the number 1. Winds up running third in here as the 3-1 second choice. So again, the betting public there was giving that horse a little bit of credence. Lunar Surge, however, the number 8 horse, goes out for George Weaver. This was a horse that had run third in this race last year, had been running over the inner track most recently, and this one, the numbers were more in the ballpark. Jose Ortiz on board. Flores Island made all the running early, and on the fractions, I thought number 2 Flores Island was going to hold up when they hit the top of the stretch, but we're watching Lunar Surge come up the inside here. Nice ride by Ortiz to get it done on the 5-2 choice.
Yeah, I mean, it was an astute ride. I mean, he kind of caught a break when Flores Island drifted out, but he kind of bided his time and sort of shot back inside. You know, it's also worth noting, I mean, Lunar Surge is really running at the end of this race. I mean, she comes home in about 38 seconds for the last 3/8. That's about a second faster than the boys came home in Campbell. So I think it's not so much that Flores Island is slowing down. I think Lunar Surge is really running at the end. And so it was a really nice win for her, a good win for George Weaver, and a really, as you said, astute ride for Jose Ortiz. I kind of like Luna Time in the spot. I kind of like Pearl Bay, who ended up nowhere. But this was a race, even in a sense, more than the Campbell, where you could have taken almost anyone in this field and said, this horse is going to win. And I think everybody would have said, yeah, I could see that. So this was another sort of widely spread wagering. But again, the favorite comes in, so some days you'll like that.
Yeah, I had written at the top of the page, wide open. And after the race, I saw the interview in the winner's circle with Weaver's assistant, and they ran third in the race last year. And they said last year they came the morning of the race. This year they came a day before and just kind of acclimated her a little bit, and that seems to have made the difference. And Frank, only got about a minute left, but let's touch on the General George tomorrow and do just a quick preview of that. Again, there's a nice card tomorrow also with a couple of 3-year-old stakes for the fillies and the males as well. But the General George tomorrow, Grade 3 event. They're going to go 7 furlongs. And while we talk, we'll take a look at the January 31st allowance optional claimer that was won by number 4 Smash and Grab. And I think off of that race, that horse is very interesting. Clearly, you have to get by horses like Bourbon Courage, who 3 triple-digit buyer figures leading into this race. Rapoli and Levine send down Misconnect. Proterio on any day can be very, very intriguing. And Zebros, who won 2 starts back, the DeFrancis Memorial at Laurel, followed up going 2 turns at Oaklawn last time in the 5th season and ran 3rd. So I think Zebros will probably attract the attention. It'll be the one to beat. But I do think Smash and Grab, very interesting off the race we just watched.
Yeah, I mean, Smash and Grab, he's a nice horse, and he does what he does. I mean, he's going to go to the lead, and he's going to go as far as he can. And, you know, he's in really good form right now. Damon DeVito has done a nice job with him since he got him back in September. And if he's in good form, I think it's worth a shot for them. I mean, I do think that I'm not sure that he gets the pace scenario that he wants, and that may be a problem. I mean, I think, obviously Bourbon Courage is Morning Line favorite and is a nice horse, and I think he's, super live here. I think the Ebros is going to be really a handful in this race. We're going to have an article up later today. Lucas thinks that this is a horse that's going to be a major player in the sprint division this year. I think that he ran that race at Oaklawn, which was a mile on the 16th, and I think that was really just a prep. And I think he's going to be very fit, and I think he's going to be a handful here. I think another horse that's, kind of interesting and worth some consideration, another local horse, is Cuddy Shark, who ran third in the Fire Plug, just behind Smash and Grab, going 6 furlongs. I think he wanted the extra furlong. He ran second to Griff in the City of Laurel. He's a nicely improving horse for Donnie Barr. I think he's going to be an interesting player in this race, too. This is another one where I think you can make the case for several of these.
Yeah, it's a fun race. And again, also the Wide Country and the Miracle Wood for the 3-year-old boys and girls on the card tomorrow. It looks like a fun card at Laurel. Tomorrow on the holiday, a good card yesterday as well, a lot of fun. You can get the recaps, you can get previews by going to the racingbiz.com. Again, the place to stop for coverage of racing in the Mid-Atlantic region, all overseen by Frank Vespi. Frank, we appreciate the visit.
It was my pleasure, Seth. Thanks for having me.
All right, Frank Vespi from the racingbiz.com. A little earlier, we were joined by phone by Steve Bick live from Florida. He's on the road. Typically he's in here with me, but last week and I guess next week as well, on the road down in Florida. We all look at him with envy. Aqueduct canceled for today. Laurel canceled for today. I was told in my ear that Dave Grenig has tweeted out that Aqueduct is canceled, and it has been confirmed, I'm being told now. Aqueduct is canceled for tomorrow. So the holiday card, unfortunately, boy, they're really getting socked. That's 12 cards that have been affected just over really the past few weeks down at Aqueduct, but that has been confirmed. Tomorrow they have canceled as well, the holiday card at Aqueduct. We'll keep our fingers crossed as far as Laurel. Haven't heard anything about them for tomorrow. All right, going to wrap things up for Loose on the Lead for this Sunday morning. Don't forget, questions, comments, suggestions. We would love to hear from you. Loose on the Lead at yahoo.com. Let us know. Again, questions, comments, or suggestions. I'm Seth Merrill. Typically in here with Steve Bick, Loose on the Lead every Sunday morning at 10 a.m. Going to wrap things up right now, but I will tell you, enjoy the races this afternoon. Let's all cash a few tickets. I'll be back in here with Racing Across America on Wednesday morning. We'll see you then.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off Track Betting.